Good morning, everyone, and welcome into Wake and Take. It's your boy Jason, and we've got some football to talk about today. We're keeping things going with some training camp hype, but you're finally going to get a break from me yapping. I have brought on a very, very special guest today, Steve Rippy of Fantasy Guides, one of, if not the king of fantasy football Instagram, giving out great content daily. Highly recommend going to follow Fantasy Guides over there and wherever else you can get the content. I'm sure we'll be breaking it down in the show. And fun fact, Steve made the Wake and Take logo. So, I mean, it's just incredible. So excited to have him on today. So why don't we go ahead and get right on into it. Take out your coffee, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Steve, how's it going?
It's good. My coffee was burning my lips, so I had to take the lid off. I don't have my heating tray, so I brought a Yeti mug down here, and I just went to take a sip, and I just about roasted my mouth. So I had to have coffee for
honestly, I don't really like coffee and talking.
I know.
But I do it.
I know. I got water with me too. No, I've actually I don't know what you do with your coffee, but I've recently switched to all black coffee. I've always added a ton of creamer and sugar, but my you start to get to my age, your A1C doesn't look as good as it should, and so now I'm straight black coffee, and I've had to learn it. You can burn yourself pretty easily with it.
Definitely. I tried actually black coffee this week on Monday's episode. I was like, I'm gonna do it, and then I took the sip and was like, I don't think I like this right now. It's not bad, but it doesn't go down as easy. So go ahead.
You're talking to somebody who, like, when I used to mix cream in with my coffee, it was like beige. I would add so much cream and sugar and stuff to it. Yeah, mine was lighter than that. So it's been quite the transition for me. But I have to say, you can get over it. I actually enjoy just a straight cup now.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I used to hate coffee even with creamer, so I get it. I'll have to force myself to do it at some point. I actually do. I make my coffee at night in a French press, and then put it in the fridge.
You are fancy.
Yeah. I kind of cool it down overnight in the fridge, and then have a little iced coffee in the morning. Helps it go down a little easier.
There you go. All right.
And it gets so hot here in Georgia. So hot.
Oh yeah. No, I'm sure iced coffee is something that's pretty popular down there.
It is. It is. Yeah, I guess you're out in Denver, so it might not be as popular. At least
it's hot. It's hot now, but not Georgia hot.
Yeah, I had a whole tangent, as I told you pre-show. Went to Idaho a couple weeks ago, and my first day back, I spent like 5 minutes complaining about how you guys have it dry. Like I was just in jeans and 104 degrees weather, just like it's fine.
Yeah, that's the one thing. Like you guys with the humidity and stepping outside and just your shirt instantly sticking. It's not that bad here. Like the heat's not that bad. It's mainly because of the dry air. I even went to the Moab area to Arches, and it was in the hundreds, but it didn't feel like crazy hot because it's so dry.
Yeah, and it's like you can find some shade or something. It feels like, I guess the best way to describe it is like you feel like you're burning, but like you can kind of escape it in a way. I feel like when you drink some water.
Yeah, you get in the shade, you're fine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So anyway, that's the weather talk of today.
I was going to say that I was assuming we were going to talk football. I didn't know it would be quite this much weather talk, but looking forward to it.
It happens. Yeah. So I guess I've got a few questions for you. A good segue would be, I mean, you're out in Denver. From what I remember, you're a Broncos fan. You're watching the games out there. So I actually have two specifically catered Broncos questions for you, or at least sort of. Okay. The first one. Russell Wilson, he picked up a calf injury at Steelers camp, missed a few practices. Justin Fields was able to get first team reps. Now Russell Wilson is back, and they're actually splitting the first team reps now. It is not very clear who is the leader in the clubhouse. You have been watching Russell Wilson the past 2 seasons in Denver, as we all have really, but I wanted to throw this to you. How have you been looking at this quarterback battle?
I think Russell Wilson is getting to that point in his career where it's possible assuming he would even want to, he might be transitioning more to like a backup quarterback role. Like he was decent last year. I mean, if you look at his stats, 20 some touchdown passes. He threw, I think, only 7 interceptions. So he was fine, but there was like the big plays were not there. He just, defenses now because of, players like Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, these defenses, they play with the deep coverage. They don't allow the deep passes. And that was Russell Wilson's game. He would run around. He would find the deep guy. He's very accurate with the deep ball, and he would take advantage of that. Not as good at like the dink and dunk stuff. And that's what defenses are forcing. And I think he just really struggled. There was plenty of times he just left guys wide open. So there was a lot, even though the stats might look okay, on paper, there was just a lot of missing points that could have had some big plays. And I think that's why Sean Payton was like, I got to get rid of this guy. I got to get out on this guy. And his mobility is not what it used to be. If you watched any Broncos games, it was painful. Like he just couldn't escape the sacks like he used to be able to. So I think the Steelers should move towards Justin Fields. I think that he offers a level that Russell Wilson just can't do at this point in his career. I think it should be a competition. I don't think it should just be, oh, we brought Fields in to back up Russell Wilson. No, I think it should be an open competition. Let the best man win. And, I'm hoping it's Fields.
I'm hoping it's Fields too. And I think it's trending that way from everything we're hearing. I mean, he's making the classic Justin Fields highlight plays. And I mean, say what you want about Justin Fields. He had his best season as a passer last year in only 13 games, right? He still had a career high in pass yards, career high in completion percentage, and a career high or a 4-touchdown passing game, which is just incredible. I know it wasn't consistent, but I mean, it's going to be hard.
I think that was against the Broncos. Was that against the Broncos?
I think it was. Yes, it was. Yeah, when the Broncos defense was so bad for that like weird stretch of time, and then they completely turned it around. Football is so weird sometimes.
Yeah. I remember that game because I recommend, streaming defenses all season. And I recommended the Broncos defense in that game. And it was not looking good for like 90% of the game. But I think Fields pulled a classic Justin Fields, fumbled the ball. The Broncos returned it for a touchdown. And so my streaming defense got saved at the very end of the game.
There is nothing. That's the thing I'm stressed out every single season the most for, is trying to give defense and special teams advice on a week-to-week basis. It's so stressful.
I love it. I've gotten, I think, pretty good at figuring out which defenses to stream. And because these, so many of the like elite defenses just get held on to, and people just in redraft leagues just start them every week, and they don't, no matter what the matchup is, it could be the 49ers. They're still playing the Chiefs. They still leave him in their lineup, so there's always good defenses available on the wire.
That's true. So guys, you know where to go if you want some TST advice. Don't come to me. I'll try my best, but Steve over here, Fantasy Guides.
I'm providing kicker advice this year too, because I had so many kicker questions last year. I'm like, you know what? I need dive deep into kicker questions.
You have to. I know I'm going to you then, because I accidentally joined a 2-kicker league. I had no idea it was like a charity league, and then I'm in the draft, and someone took a kicker in round 4, and I was like, "Wait, what's going on here?"
Oh, I didn't know they had that.
I didn't either. I kind of hate it, honestly. I have kickers that I don't even know are going to be starting because I just kept. I didn't want to draft kickers. Why would I do that?
Oh, that's funny.
But I'll keep you posted.
Yeah,
but so it seems like we're both on the same Justin Fields page. He just brings a level of upside that Russell Wilson just can't. And we'll see it develop over the course of the season. I, for one, believe once we see those terrible towels swinging and they're all chanting Justin Fields' name, it's going to be very hard to sit that man. That's kind of the way I look at it. And so we'll go from the former Broncos quarterback and Russell Wilson to this new quarterback room over in Denver. It's seemingly a weird competition. Jarrett Stidham, Zach Wilson, Bo Nix. Latest reports are saying Jarrett Stidham looks the best. I still am taking the stance that Bo Nix will be starting week 1. I mean, it's just going to take some time as a rookie quarterback to be good in practice, especially over one that's been on the team a couple seasons now. So I still think Bo Nix is going to be the week 1 starter. I think this team really wants to find an identity, and that's going to start with throwing your rookie quarterback to the wolves. But you're there. What are you seeing? What are you thinking of this battle?
Well, no, I agree. I think it's going to be Bo Nix. From everything I've been reading, Zach Wilson hasn't even been practicing with the first team for the last 3 or 4 days. So I don't even think he's in the mix. So it would be between him and Stidham. And I think that the thing when you sit your quarterback, like when, the classic Aaron Rodgers sat behind Favre. I mean, Jordan Love behind Rodgers. I think it depends on who's the quarterback you're sitting behind and learning from, because it's always like we want them to sit and learn from the starter. But like if your starter Stidham, like I just don't see a scenario where it's like that's necessarily a good thing for Bo Nix. Bo Nix has as much experience as any quarterback that's ever entered the league. He played for like 6 seasons of college football. I think he has the most career starts in the history of NCAA football. So yeah, he's ready to go. I think Bo Nix is ready to start. He's a top 12 pick. So I'm not buying that anyone else but Bo Nix will start week 1. And I think it'll be good for everybody if he does.
Yeah, you've definitely got to go ahead and get Bo Nix before he's officially the starter. I think the writing is on the wall that he will be. This did make me think, was Bo Nix and Jarrett Stidham on the same Auburn team, or were they just a year apart? I have to figure this out.
Oh, I don't know.
No, 1 year. Jarrett Stidham left in 2018. Bo Nix came in 2019. But
okay.
That's something I thought about for a second.
Well, just the fact that we just said 2019 Bo Nix was playing college football and he's just now entering the NFL shows you he has a bit of college experience.
Definitely. I mean, last season, 45 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. Cannot complain about that. One of the things that drew Sean Payton to Bo Nix, from what I remember reading, was the fact that Oregon runs a very similar offense to what he wants to run. Russell Wilson really wasn't able to manage it, but Bo Nix should be able to. And I honestly like the fact they got Troy Franklin to go with him. I know it was an underperforming combine. But awesome. So get them both. We go for the Bo Nix.
You know what's funny? I don't have his combine numbers in front of me, but everyone talks about was an underwhelming combine. I think it's only because they expected such insane combine numbers.
Yeah.
But overall, his combine was pretty good. Like I think it's just the fact that he didn't run in the 4.3s that people were like, oh, it was terrible. But everything else he was explosive.
Yeah, 4.41. By the way, so it's like about as close as you can be.
I think he had a really high vertical too, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway,
yeah, we don't have the vertical scores.
Well, now I'm curious. Why don't you look that up while I talk about just Google search or ask ChatGPT what was Troy Franklin's vertical. But I just want to tangent real quick too. You know, that we did a podcast last night. We were talking about Bo Nix and how he checked down so much to the running back position. You know, Bucky Irving, so many receptions last year at Oregon. And the fact that also Sean Payton has historically targeted the running back position a ton. I still think Javonte Williams is the running back in Denver. I know there was cut rumors. I never bought into that. I don't buy into it. I still think he's the best running back on the team. I mean, he completely reconstructed his knee. It wasn't just your typical ACL tear. And he was playing week 1. He's going to be good to go this year. I think that he could be in store for like 50 plus receptions. If you combine what Sean Payton has historically done to the running back position, the past, I think it was 10 years, Sean Payton led offenses have ranked in the top 5 in targets to the running back position. So I'm really in on Javonte Williams as a value pick this year. I think he's going to get, the offense might not be great. He might not score a lot of touchdowns, but I could see him with like 60 receptions by the end of the year. And any running back can get 60 receptions is going to be somebody I want.
Yeah, I mean, last year he was just less than 100%, but, he still at least got some volume. And that's really all you can ask for. Now that he's healthy, I hope we can see some of the Javonte Williams we saw the rookie season. I'll ask you this. How are you viewing Audric Estime, Jaleel McLaughlin?
I liked the rookie last year. He's still an undrafted guy. I thought he looked decent. I just don't see him being anything more than like a change of pace guy. I buy into Audric Estime a little bit more. I know he dropped in drafts. His 40 time wasn't that great. He looked like a little bit more of a plotter, but when you watch him on film, he looks more athletic than that. So I think it's going to be Estime as the change of pace guy or the guy that gets more work. But and he's looked good in camp so far. He's made some good plays. So I think he would be the number 2 guy. But I mean, I still think it's Javonte, taking at least 60% of the snaps and then probably split between some of the other guys. I think P. Ryan could be the guy that's on the outs.
That's what it's looking like at this point, which is strange. I mean, he is a guy that coaching staffs generally love, but I'm sure he'll find a spot on another team if he is released. Before we move on from this discussion, Bach needs to know. is Marvin Mims gonna return his value? Is he coming back? Is he gonna have a good year this year?
I think it's going to be hard. Honestly, like, well, return his value. What is his value? He's going undrafted, right? I
Yeah, pretty
can't
much.
even. Yeah.
Like
So no,
70.
I'm not. I liked him. I didn't love him coming out. I think he's okay for like the big plays, like to keep the defense honest. I think for real life football, he brings a dynamic to the offense that helps the overall offense. But the only pass catcher who I'm excited about is Cortland Sutton. I think he should be a value. I don't think he's going to be a wide receiver 1 or anything, but I think he could approach wide receiver 2 numbers and be a solid flex play, a solid wide
Yeah,
receiver 3.
we could say Cortland Sutton, Deontay Johnson type return, but I'll go in a couple rounds later. So
Yeah.
I like that call. I mean, he's going to be
Yeah.
consistent. And sometimes you just need those consistent players on your
Yeah.
roster, even if it feels a little gross. So I like that call. I'm excited. I'm really excited to see this Broncos offense, just what they look like, because this has kind of been the one that I've been scared to attack for the most part. In Dynasty, I've been taking my swings on Franklin and Nix, but for redraft, like I haven't.
There's good reason to be scared. I'm not that excited either, but I do think Cortland Sutton, yeah, like I said, he's not. I don't know that he has like a league winning profile, but he's the wide receiver 50. He's going to return value on that. I can't say that. He was a wide receiver 28, I think, last year.
Exactly, yeah. And so I think it's a good one. And hey, worst case scenario, or maybe even a good scenario, you could probably hold him once he has some of those big weeks. Maybe flip him for another player you like a little bit more. But I think we
package
can
him
both agree that
or package him with another player to upgrade.
Exactly. Definitely. Yeah. I mean, those consistent players, they hold their value, and people are going to want them, especially once the points start coming in. Like right now, we're all like, but then once he's getting 12 points a game, we're gonna be like, yeah, I need a flex player. I need my wide receiver 2 or 3 to come in and do well. So I like that call a lot. Just excited to see how it all shakes out. I think that there could be some value to be had, especially, I mean, if you just wait, like once someone actually breaks out, just buy into them, because they're probably not going to be too expensive on this offense.
Yeah, I'll say as a Broncos fan, I just want to say thank God for fantasy football because back in the day when I just had the Broncos were the only thing that brought me joy watching football. This would have been a rough time.
It would have. Now because I mean, hey, you could suck for real life, but you can score fantasy points in garbage time.
For sure. Well, I just mean I can watch all the other teams and watch my takes that I've made or players I've drafted. That's what I love about fantasy football.
Yeah, I'm a red zone guy through and through at this point. That is on. Anyway, that is some of the bigger camp stories that I felt kind of catered to you and your expertise over here in Denver. I did want to ask, today's the day. Football is back. Do you have any excitement for this Hall of Fame game?
No, the Hall of Fame game, it's literally the least exciting preseason game that nobody ever plays. They just have, footage of them like in street clothes, on the sideline. No, I don't have that. Maybe I'll do a prop bet on Dameon Pierce, over. Yeah. I don't know what his lines are at. I'll have to go look, but maybe I'll do something with that. But no, I mean, it's exciting that football's back, but I don't have a ton of excitement for the actual game.
Yeah, I'll probably turn it on and then probably turn it off and go to bed.
Was it last year? Wasn't it? Didn't Josh Jacobs play in the Hall of Fame game last year? And it was like,
yes,
weird.
And it caused like everyone to freak out about Josh Jacobs. I do remember that. Like every running back got reps for Vegas last year. You're
Actually,
right.
it might have been. Was it last year, or am I thinking 2 years ago? Because it was like a reason people. I can't remember, but I feel like people got really low on Josh Jacobs after that. But no, I'm excited for football, but I don't know that I'll be dialed into the Hall of Fame game necessarily.
For sure. I'll at least tell the people tomorrow, some of the people that maybe stood out if you guys tune in.
Yeah.
Harry Snowman says it was both years in the chat that Josh Jacobs played in the Hall ofAme game. Interesting.
Oh, did they play too? Interesting. Okay. Did not know that.
There we go.
Well, so I think it was the year that he did really well when Josh Jacobs finishes like the RB3. I think people got, including myself, probably got a little nervous because it was, Josh McDaniels taking over as the head coach. There was rumors about him getting traded, blah, blah, blah. And then he played in the Hall of Fame game and it did freak people out.
So funny. I'm excited to see who ends up playing tonight. I am going with the Texans. It's a better coached team. And when you're playing with backups, that's generally what I look at. Not a big Eberflus fan here, to be completely honest with you guys. Whole new staff. Caleb Williams isn't playing. I'm going to go with the Texans to win it. And I'm going to go with Jawar Jordan as the standout for the Texans.
All right. Okay.
Pull a little name out of the hat there.
I like that. I like that.
Let's get some takes from you, man. Let's get some takes. Let's move on to the take part of the show. Are we kind of worried about any of these holdouts really at all? For, I guess, the big wide receivers, Jamar Chase, Ayuk, Lamb.
I went back and I was like really trying to think of wide receivers that have held out in the last decade where they actually held out, and I could not come up with any. I remember AJ Green. There was talks with him. There was talks with Julio Jones at certain points, but it never got to an actual holdout. The only ones I can even think of offensively were Le'Veon Bell when he sat out the entire season. Melvin Gordon when he missed the first 4 games of the season. Ezekiel Elliott, he held out, but he actually never missed any games. But those are all running backs, which we've seen that with just the devaluation of the position. The only other ones I could find was Joey Bosa actually missed the first 4 games of his rookie year when he held out, and then Aaron Donald missed a game when he held out back in 2017. So we haven't seen it with wide receivers. I'm not saying it couldn't happen. I just don't see it happening. I think they'll all get deals worked out. The Chase one seems kind of strange, though, doesn't it? Because
it does. It came out of nowhere.
Well, but he's a year early on trying to get the extension. That's the part. We're seeing the 2020 wide receivers. That's why CeeDee Lamb's trying to get his contract extension. We just saw Justin Jefferson get the big one. So Jamar Chase is a year after those guys. So I thought that was interesting with him, but he'll be back at a certain point. I'm really not worried about it at all.
Yeah, I don't think we really should be. The kind of just the big thing I'm looking at when I see these holdouts is who can step up in their absence. We're hearing Andre Yosevich in Cincinnati, Mike Gesicki for some reason as well. In San Francisco, we were hearing some Jacob Cowing, now some Ricky Pearsall that he's back. And in Dallas, Jalen Tolbert showing up. And to everyone in my audience, Ryan Flournoy did return to practice yesterday. Still not on the pads, but out there in the jersey. He'll be hopefully back by the end of the week, or not, if not fully up to speed next week. So it was just a minor injury, and he should be good to go.
keep me updated on Jacob Cowing, because I've got him as a free agent ad in one of my dynasty leagues just because he was available. And I was like, well, he had decent draft capital. So if you get any more buzz, I'll try to sell high on that buzz.
Yeah, no, he has been showing up. I believe he did end up picking up a hamstring injury last week. I haven't seen any updates on the severity of it, but that was a player that really did stand out to me at the Senior Bowl. He's got a lot of that Tank Dell, just kind of undersized route running prowess, but actually has some contested catch ability, mega producer, 2 different colleges. So I think he has some potential, especially if a Debo or Brandon Ayuk leave. I think that he could, probably take over that Jawan Jennings role. Maybe, and maybe more. Right. I do like him a lot as a little bit.
I'm going to hold on to him then.
Hold on to him. See what happens. Right. So we've got some hype building. Over at training camp, we've got hype. And I want to know 3 players that you are buying the hype on and trying to get on your roster before they capitalize on this hype.
So I brought up 3. 2 of them are rookies. Lad McConkey in LA. Yes. And sometimes it's just confirmation bias. Was really into Lad McConkey through the whole draft process. When I watched his film, I thought he looked like fast Cooper Kupp. He looked like he can play anywhere. He can play on the outside. He can play in the slot. And that's where they've been using him in camp, and he's been making a lot of plays. So I think that there is some risk that if he gets designated to a slot role in this, Jim Harbaugh offense, it could limit him as far as if they've got Chark playing outside and they've got Josh Palmer playing in the 2 wide receiver sets. But I think he's good enough to where they're going to try to get him on the field no matter what. So I'm not too worried about it, but I think I'm not surprised by that. He's almost a first round pick, the second pick in the second round. So pretty excited about that. I still think he's the wide receiver 1 in LA.
Yeah, I think by the end of the season, he'll at least lead in targets. I think the thing I'm trying to wrap my head around is how many touchdowns, how many yards, but
Mhm.
he's an incredible route runner. And we're already hearing the connection flourish with him and Justin Herbert. And so that's exactly what you want to hear, at least for a dynasty asset. Might take some time for the first few weeks of season, but I do believe he'll be clicking. And I'm actually buying into this Chargers offense, especially Justin Herbert. I'm not
Yeah.
really believing the run heavy. I mean, they might be run heavy, but as a Michigan fan, it's just going to be a balanced and just better run offense. Jim Harbaugh knows how to use his personnel properly, and that's something we haven't really seen with Staley the last few seasons with Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert has a 700 pass attempt season. Jim
Yeah.
Harbaugh's not really going to hold a quarterback of Justin Herbert's talent back just to give the ball to Gus Edwards. Like, sure, they're going to run the ball a lot, but I do like when you look at Greg Roman and Jim Harbaugh's NFL quarterbacks, it was Colin Kaepernick and Lamar Jackson and Frank Gore, and then a really good Ravens running back room as well with Greg Roman. So I think that there's a really sneaky potential for the Chargers to pass the ball a lot more than people are giving credit for. And at the very least, it's just going to open up play action and just be a more efficient offense, which doesn't necessarily need as much volume. I mean, we're talking about Brock Purdy, being a top fantasy asset, but he was 32nd in pass attempts per game, right? So it doesn't really matter. Justin Herbert is so talented. There's still going to be pass plays, and he has that sneaky rushing upside. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some designed runs for Justin Herbert next year as well. So I'm buying into that offense, especially the passing part, because it's a bit deflated right now, because we're projecting a lot of runs. But I think we need to pump the brakes at least a little bit on that because of the personnel. I mean, it's Justin Herbert we're talking about. So
I'm so glad to hear you say that because I've been saying the same thing all offseason. I feel like we do this thing where I'm guilty of it too, but we do this thing where we talk about here's this new system change, this completely new system. They're just going to be run heavy, and you forget how good Justin Herbert is. Like, why
yes.
would you got to think Jim Harbaugh, part of the reason he wanted to go to Los Angeles was Justin Herbert. Like, that's a big
Yes.
part of it. You don't go there just to go, I want to hand the ball off to J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. Like if you were if you wanted your run game to be that good, wouldn't you go get like a Saquon Barkley or something? Wouldn't you get like a Derrick Henry if you really wanted your run game to be that good? No, I think Herbert is going to be sneaky good this year. I think he's a great value. Is he going as like what is he, the QB 14 right now
In
in
redraft, yeah.
drafts?
Yeah.
In redraft. Like I found myself drafting him. I've been doing, underdog drafts, all off season, but I've been doing a lot of mock drafts lately because I've been writing content about like picking from the 101, the 102, like what I see as value. And I've been taking Herbert a lot in I think probably around like the 10th or 11th round.
Yeah.
Because I think that, and I think that sneaking upside, rushing upside, like who knows, they could do a lot more designed runs with him. We saw it with Colin
Exactly.
Kaepernick, and Justin Herbert's a very athletic quarterback. I would not be surprised if we see 400 or 500 rushing yards from Herbert this year. So I think he's a great value this year. I think this offense is going to be good.
I love it. I love it. I think the last thing I want to add to Lad McConkey is it pains me because going into this draft process, I think a lot of people were expecting Jim Harbaugh to draft Michigan players. And Lad McConkey profiles very, very similarly to Roman Wilson. Same height, same weight, same 40-yard dash, both really
Yep.
good route runners. But Jim Harbaugh decided to trade up to lock down Lad McConkey instead of just sitting pretty and maybe even getting his guy that he's already familiar with almost the same exact profile in Roman Wilson, either a round later or where they were at. And I think that says a lot about how much they like this player. So
Well, and I just think the efficiency could be really, really good for McConkey because when you see him, when he catches a pass, he might be of this wide receiver class. He seemed like the fastest to turn upfield as soon as he catches the ball. He'll like take a hitch route, catch it, and then he's already upfield. It's almost like there's barely any pause once he catches the ball. So I think that especially when you think about the play action, because they're going to be running a lot, they're probably going to be doing a lot of RPO stuff. That he's going to have some plays that are designed where he's going to have a lot of run after the catch ability. So I think he's going to be super efficient. So even if he gets, let's say he's like 65 receptions or something, nothing crazy high, but like 50 to 60 receptions, I think he could do a lot with those receptions. So no, I'm excited about him. I think he's going to get a high target share in that offense.
Let's go. Lad McConkey, camp high buy number 1, camp high buy number 2, deliver.
So Jalen Polk's been getting a lot of camp buzz,
Yes.
and
Yes, it is.
this one a little bit similar to McConkey. I'm buying into because one, I think he was a good player. I don't think he's as good as McConkey, but he was drafted in a similar spot as McConkey.
Mhm.
And this wide receiver room does not scare me at all. I do like Demario Douglas, but I think he's more of that slot guy. I think we know where they're going to use him. I think Polk could be the guy that they move all over the field. And nobody else on that roster really scares me. Kendrick Bourne's still coming back from an injury, probably going to take him some time. So he's a guy that, well, again, I'm not expecting, kind of like when I was talking about Cortland Sutton earlier. I don't think he's going to give you wide receiver 1 numbers, probably not even wide receiver 2 numbers, but I think he could give you wide receiver 3 numbers. And so he's definitely a guy. I think you can get him right now around 14 or 15 in your drafts. And he's a guy I've been taking a lot in mock drafts.
Yeah, Jalen Polk's another one. It has taken me some time. After the draft, I was one of those Javon Baker guys. Like, just I
I
love.
like I like Javon Baker too. I like both of them actually.
100%. I think that my big takeaway here is I firmly believe that both of these rookie wide receivers are going to be good. And I really do think that this new staff and regime got that Patriots can't draft wide receivers monkey off their back. I think these guys are both going to hit. I really do. Everything we're seeing, they both have the dog mentality. They're both quote machines. They're both extremely hard workers, and they're both making highlight plays at camp. I'm very excited for these guys. Very good ADPs too. Like, it's really not a lot. And I know that it's because we're not excited about Jacoby Brissett, but it's still going to be volume. It might not be a lot of touchdowns, but these guys will definitely be good. And even if they'll probably still have some touchdowns. And then when Drake May comes in, then the ceiling becomes truly unlocked towards the end of the season when it really matters most. So I like getting these Patriots receivers while you can, because it really does seem like I like it.
Yeah, and I had to pick one. I guess I could have said New England wide receivers because I do believe in both of them. I would give Polk a little bit of the advantage right now, but I wouldn't be all that surprised if Baker ended up being the guy either.
Yeah, I think they'll both. I think Polk is the one that will get like the targets, or at least the higher volume. But Javon Baker, I think, might get like the more important, like deeper shots, maybe some more touchdowns and stuff like that. Some of the more explosive plays. But I think both will be very consistent on a week-to-week basis. Go ahead and give us our third camp hype buy. I like this one.
Yeah, George Pickens, man. I've been excited about him prior to camp. He's always looked good in camp. Even as a rookie, he looked good at camp. Remember, like all the bobbling one-handed catches he was making as a rookie and just knocking cornerbacks on their butts, run blocking. He looks like he reminds me of DK Metcalf, like a smaller version of DK Metcalf, both physically and mentally. Like he's a bully. And in camp, I've been seeing him making those same one-handed catches, and they look so easy, And now you were just talking about Roman Wilson. Now with him being injured with that ankle injury, rookies missing training camps never good, because not only are they missing reps, they're learning a new offense, an NFL offense. So, now it's just Pat Freiermuth is literally the only person Pickens has to compete with. And last year in games without Deontay Johnson, he had a 20% target share in those games, and he averaged 8.3 targets per game, 16.5 fantasy points per game, which are wide receiver 1 numbers, So he's right now going, I don't know. I'm sure he's gone up a little bit. I haven't checked his ADP. Let me just see what his ADP is right now. It is wide receiver 27. It actually hasn't gone up very. I think he was wide receiver 28 a couple weeks ago. So it's barely gone up. I think he's smashing that value right now. He's one of my favorite picks. I think in sleeper drafts right now, his ADP has him like, I want to say 5th round, maybe. I think he's going in around the 5th round. And I've been taking him in probably about a third of my drafts, it feels like, especially if I go like running back early. And I'm looking for, that wide receiver that could be a potential wide receiver 1. I've been taking him a lot.
I love it. George Pickens. I mean, you're telling me the only reason he fell in drafts is because he's too intense. That's exactly what we want from wide receivers. And he showed time again on the field. Last year, he actually led the NFL, number one in the NFL in yards per reception, 18.1 yards per catch last year, which was incredible. Fifth in yards per target, was top 10 in a number of incredible metrics as well over at Player Profiler. Highly recommend just seeing his page. And still finished the year, despite the quarterback kind of revolving door in Pittsburgh, still finished with over 1,000 yards and 5 receiving touchdowns. Literally all you can ask for a wide receiver and what was happening last year. Now he's going to be even more of a focal point. Like you mentioned with Roman Wilson missing camp, it's going to be hard for him to earn a decent target share really all year. He's going to be fighting for it, especially with Mike Tomlin, who historically doesn't do a ton with the rookies already. So I'm very excited for George Pickens this season. I've been holding on to him for very long. You know, I've been in on George Pickens since the draft video with the like head thing. He's just like standing in front of the TV. That video to me, it was just incredible. So I've been locking the dude down since then. But I think this is finally the year. This is finally the year 3 breakout coming for George Pickens. Good call. Good call.
Yeah. And, you know, if you want to think about which quarterback he might be getting, like, okay, so if he gets Russell Wilson, I could see him being a better version of Cortland Sutton because both are very good contested catch, you know, players. He's just more explosive than Sutton, just overall a better player. So I think he could have a better season than we saw from Cortland Sutton last year, which was the wide receiver 28. And then with Justin Fields, I've heard some, you know, well, Justin Fields can't pass. He, you know, it's gonna limit him. Well, DJ Moore was what, the wide receiver 6 last year, playing with Justin Fields. So I think either way, it's going to be a good thing. I think both are an upgrade over Kenny Pickett. So I'm all in on George Pickens this year.
100%. Yeah, 1364 receiving yards, 8 receiving touchdowns. 16.9 points per game for DJ Moore last year. That was 9th amongst all wide receivers. And keep in mind, Tyson Bagent was his quarterback for 4 games too. So
I forgot about that.
Good stuff. I like the George Pickens call. I think it's happening. I really, really do. Something that's not happening. We're hearing hype for a lot of players, but we want to sell some of those hypes. And I've just got one player that I want to hear from you that all you have to give me. Who's getting hyped up that you're not buying into? In fact, if you roster them, you're going to sell them.
Rashad Bateman, I think, was the guy that came to mind for me because I feel like I was hearing it in the spring camp. You know, oh, he looks like he's dialed in. I don't know that he's necessarily like a bad wide receiver. I think he's been unlucky with injuries, but you know, it's been long enough and we just haven't seen enough from him. At best, he's the 3rd receiving option on this team behind Zay Flowers, behind Mark Andrews. On a team that's still run focused, they still run a ton. I remember last year everyone was talking about, oh, now they're gonna switch. You know, they're gonna be more with Todd Monken. They're gonna be more, you know, pass heavy. It didn't really happen. Now they added Derrick Henry. I think that's even less likely to happen. And even like some of the other players on the team, they still got Nelson Aguilar, who's he's not great, but he's fine. You know, he's still gonna have his plays. And then Isaiah Likely, they're still going to be doing a lot of 2 tight end sets. So I just think Bateman, the path for him being anything relevant that you could feel comfortable putting in your lineup is not going to happen. So yeah, he's a guy I'm out on. The other one I thought about, and I'll ask you about him because I know you really like him, was Jameson Williams.
No!
He's getting, yes, I want to know what your thoughts are because he's getting a ton of hype. I think it could happen, but I just think that it's going to be hard, man. With Amon-Ra, we know he's going to get so many targets. We know Sam Laporta is going to get his. We know Jahmyr Gibbs is going to get his. And I do like Jared Goff. I think he's underrated, but I don't know. I'm struggling to see a scenario where all 4 of those guys are getting a ton of receiving work.
I think it's a fair concern, but I think at Jameson Williams' price, it doesn't necessarily matter as much. And I think he'll be one of those boomer bust players that you could actually pretty frequently predict those boom weeks just based on matchup coverage. I mean, Jared Goff, 605 pass attempts last year. That was 2nd in the NFL. That's a ton of attempts going out there. I know Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to get his. I am starting to come around on Sam Laporta losing some targets, not a ton, but I do think that a lot of because a lot of Sam Laporta's usage came with Jameson Williams' suspension and the fact that, you know, Josh Reynolds and Khalif Raymond aren't like that good. So they kind of had to force him into the offense and give him probably a little bit more than he needed. Not saying he'll be bad, but I mean, like, I think that we could take some away from him. And then Josh Reynolds is gone. That's vacating 64 targets. I think all of those are going to Jameson Williams, which would put him over 100 targets next season, which is plenty for that type of player with that speed, with that playmaking ability. I really, really like him. I really do. I haven't given up on him since his rookie season. Unfortunately, I'm damn sure not going to do it now, especially with the hype building up. And I think kind of the thing that a lot of people aren't noticing from Jameson Williams is the fact he's doing everything right. Like, yes, he's making those big plays. Yes, he's taking those jet sweeps to the house. Yes, he's getting 2 touchdowns in the NFC Championship. But I think what goes underreported in the fantasy football space is how good of a run blocker he is too. And when you are with Dan Campbell as your head coach, to be out there on almost any David Montgomery breakaway run, to be the lead blocker time and time again. Like if you look at David Montgomery highlights, it's really Jameson Williams blocking highlights, which is rare for a wide receiver Jameson Williams size. And so I just think that shows he has his head in the game. It shows he's not a knucklehead. It shows he wants to do everything he can to be out there. With all of those things, with the production we've seen, the playmaking ability, the profile, the first-round draft capital, the potential for 100 targets on one of the best offenses in the league, this is a player you can't fade. You just can't. You just can't do it. So I'm getting Jameson Williams still, even with the hype. I know it's still going to be harder to acquire, but I still don't think hard enough. Like he's still outside the top 40 in dynasty rankings and still super young with such a good profile. And I mean, a lot of what held him back wasn't even his fault. I mean, an injury. And then for betting on the NBA, like, come on, like really? Like it's not that big of a deal, NFL.
I kind of forgot about that actually. Well, let me just do a quick name game with you then.
Okay.
Some wide this is for redraft. I'm just looking on Sleeper's ADP right now. So he's going a little bit behind Keon Coleman and JSN. When I say a little bit behind, close to a round behind. So you probably, it's not a fair comparison, but who do you like out of those 3? You like him more than those 2?
In full PPR, I'll take JSN, but I will in standard half PPR, I'll still take JMO for redraft purposes over all of those guys.
What about Christian? Sorry, go ahead.
Christian Watson, I think, is where it's like, because I love Christian Watson too. I do have a type.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, like really in my underdog drafts this offseason, I've been trying to get one of JMO or Christian Watson. I do think that really both of those guys are going to be pretty explosive this year, especially when I don't have to set my lineup. But I do think that Christian Watson has more of the alpha upside. Like he can still lead the Packers in targets, whereas Jameson Williams isn't going to do that for Detroit.
We know Williams will not lead his team in targets, and it will be hard for him probably to even be number 2. So yeah, I'm kind of in on Watson this year too. Like everybody's talking about Jaden Reed, and I don't know. Jaden Reed to me scored a lot of touchdowns, and I think he's fine. But I think he's not a guy that necessarily we were talking about camp hype necessarily, but I feel like he could be a little overhyped in this Green Bay offense. Christian Watson, there were games when he's healthy. He looks like he can completely take over. Yeah. Like when that Chiefs game last year, he was completely taking over the game before he injured his hamstring. And if this asymmetry in his hamstring is all it is, and we get a healthy Christian Watson season, I think he's going to smash. So yeah, I do prefer Watson out of the 2 of them.
Yeah, I'll be with you there. I mean, I think his ADP is about right for a player like Jameson Williams. But I just think that it's a good cost. I mean, like he really can be a really, really big part of this Lions offense. And he has weak winning upside. Like he does have 30, 40 point week potential on that offer.
I can tell you a part of the reason I haven't drafted him at all in any mock drafts I've been doing is because there's a few players like with some of the strategies I've been doing that are going in that area. One of them, Jaden Daniels, is going right like a couple picks after Jameson Williams. And I've been trying to build rosters around Jaden Daniels when I do a lot of these mock drafts because I just like his upside of where he's going. So that's probably why I'm not getting as much Jameson Williams.
That's fair. And Fantasy Plumber brings up an interesting point. Everything went the Lions' way last year, and betting against it might be the play. I think I could argue that taking Jameson Williams is almost a hedge on the Lions offense, because if they are struggling, then they're going to have to lean on that type of archetype even more. The big plays, just giving it to JMO and seeing what could happen. And given he's the cheapest asset on the team, it still gives you some exposure to an offense that should still be really good, but has the potential to not be. So I think if this is your reasoning, then you should probably still take Jameson Williams, because that's the type of player that can beat you. And I don't like leaving those players out there.
Right.
So you've got your training camp hype sell. How about a dude who's just been sucking, just absolutely terrible at camp that you think will continue to be terrible and you're just going to continue to fade?
I think it's cheating that I picked this guy, but I mean, Quentin Johnston, right? That's just the easy one. Like, not only is it a new coaching staff that has no ties to him, but also the personnel might not even match up well with him. Him getting on the field is going to be hard. It's not going to be as pass heavy as it's been in the past. He's looking bad in camp for a lot of the reasons that people didn't like about him. So I would not be shocked if this guy got cut. Like that's how bad it's been. I think that he's just one of those guys, every year you get a few wide receivers drafted in the first round that just literally like a Jalen Reagor type that just nothing ever happens of their career. And I think he's the next one of those.
I wanted to believe Quentin Johnston so bad. My take this offseason has been, well, Jim Harbaugh win against Quentin Johnston. Quentin Johnston's best play in college was a screen against Michigan that he housed. Maybe Harbaugh will remember that and just give him some screens, let him be a yak guy and not try to put him into the Mike Williams role that he was in last year. Maybe not a ton of volume, but just utilized properly. It's seeming like he's not even going to get that because they tried that in camp. We saw it. They were doing drag routes. Yeah. They were giving him screens, and he's still dropping those. And so I think it's over. I saw my very first Brendan Rice highlight this morning when I was going through some stuff. And when you start to see the Brendan Rice highlights, that's when you know that they were doing everything they can to figure out how to replace Quentin Johnston and see who can beat him on the depth chart. I like Brendan Rice from the Senior Bowl, but to see him fall so far in the draft, there's got to be something there. But now he's getting the highlights that even Quentin Johnston can't. I mean, the Quentin Johnston highlights are all body catches and like when the defense was told not to play aggressively. Like that's the only time he's been catching the ball. So I'm with you 100%. I think he's officially, I mean, Popfather called it immediately. He's a bust, but like he's a bust's bust. Like it's over already. Yeah. And it's sad.
I think so too. If you in dynasty leagues, I don't even know what you could get for him, but I'd probably take anything at this point.
Yeah. Fourth rounder.
Probably I would take a fourth rounder. I think, it might sound crazy now, but like when you're in the fourth round of your draft next year, people are gonna be excited and they might want that pick. So I don't know. I don't think there's much difference. I think that's about what he's worth.
There's always someone fun in the fourth round. There was Brendan Rice, which I guess you should be buying MVProf. Why not? See what happens. And Ryan Florno we talked about. Devontae Walker, when you talked about Rashad Bateman, I think he's someone that can make some noise in Baltimore. There's always someone in that fourth round, and they will probably produce more than Quentin Johnston ever will. Let's move on. We've got I want two more takes from you. Just two more, and we'll get you out of here. Who's your number one sleeper right now that we need to be keeping our eyes on?
I was talking about this on my podcast last night, and Devin Singletary, I find myself drafting every time I do a mock draft. Where he's going right now, I just think he's going, I've been getting him in the 9th round. 8th, 9th round is if you really want to get him the 8th round, but the 9th. And part of the reason is I feel like the dead zone is actually there's a lot of good backs I like in the RB dead zone this year. It feels really like good. If you want to wait on running back, there's so many good ones late. I kept doing this thing where I'm like, oh man, if I do a hero strategy or a zero strategy, all of a sudden I'm like panicking, like, oh crap, I haven't taken a running back early enough. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh no, there's a lot of good ones. And so let me find my spot here. I had some notes that I wanted to. On average, his career, he's got a 4.6 yard per carry average, and he's shown he can handle a heavy workload. He's just not exciting. He's this undersized, not overly explosive back. There's just nothing. He doesn't even have a visor, Jason. He doesn't wear a visor. No arm sleeves.
No visor?
No visor. No. And so there's nothing exciting about him. But last year, a guy I liked, Dameon Pierce, he basically made him irrelevant in Houston last year. Yeah. He took over for like the second half of the season. During the last 9 games of the season, he averaged 19.5 touches per game. He had 8 touchdowns and 3 top 10 finishes over that span, averaging 14.5 points per game, which was 16th at the position. And he's shown he's a solid receiver. He's never had fewer than 29 receptions at any point in his career. And he's never been a full-time player for the most part. So to have a floor of 29 receptions, I think is really good. But the reason I like him as a sleeper is I think this year we could see those numbers drastically increase because there's just no competition. The running backs playing around him have a total of 18 combined rushing attempts for their careers. And none of them, you might like Tyron Tracy behind him, but nobody has anything higher than 5th round draft capital. So I think he has one of the most predictable, safe workloads that you could have from a running back going in his range, possibly one of the better workloads of the entire NFL,
Yeah.
And right now he's going, well after a lot of these guys, but he's going after running backs that are in full-blown committees like Kenneth Walker, DeAndre Swift, the Steelers running backs, the Titans running backs, Raheem Mostert, Nick Chubb, Zach Moss, Austin Eckler. He's going after all those guys. And all those guys we know are going to have a very split backfield. Last year, playing with Dameon Pierce over the last 12 games of the season, he saw his snap share drop below 70% only 4 times. So he was getting at least 70% of the snaps. There were a few games where he got in the high 80s as well. I think he has a shot to do as well as any of those backs that I just listed ahead of him, but you're getting him. He's like the last one, right? You're getting him at the cheapest. So I think that, like DeAndre Swift versus Devin Singletary, I actually like Singletary probably a little bit more, and you're getting him way after you have to draft DeAndre Swift. So I just think he's extremely affordable. He's going to have a great workload. I think he's going to give you some RB1 weeks, and I think he'll probably be an RB2, maybe a back end RB2 by the season's end, but he's going as like the RB32 right now.
Yeah, I think it's an easy one as well. I mean, that range right now for running backs really is incredible. It's him, Brian Robinson. There's some of the rookies as well that I think could end up having a really big workload. And Devin, Motor Singletary now. He at least pulled out the cool nickname.
That's true. That's true. I just learned that last night, by the way. And now you're the second person to say that.
Yeah, it hasn't been marketed enough.
Yeah.
But what we saw in Hard Knocks is that Brian Daboll, who worked with him with the Buffalo Bills, by the way, and liked him a lot, basically chose to bring in Devin Singletary over Saquon.
Oh, I didn't bring that part up. Yeah, exactly. Former head coach.
Right. So I mean, like they had the opportunity. Like it wasn't like they could have matched that Eagles offer or beaten that Eagles offer for Saquon Barkley. They could have brought in any free agent running back that was moving around last year. I mean, Josh Jacobs, was going to a new team. Like you could have brought in anyone. Yeah. They chose to bring in Motor Singletary, a guy that the staff was familiar with and did really well in Houston last year, and is an all-purpose back. Third round draft capital too. Like everyone's like, oh, he's so athletic. Is Devin Singletary's gross. Like the NFL didn't really think that. Third round draft capital for running back is pretty damn good, and he's been consistent his entire career. Like all he's done is just get snaps and get touches, and it's gonna happen again. So I like that call a lot.
And this coming from a guy that I've never really liked him, and you know what? Shame on me, because I think I was like, well, he's not explosive. He's not, he's not that big of a running back. He's not super dynamic, and he's proven me wrong year after year. So I'm in on him this year.
Let's go. Hopefully he doesn't prove you wrong this year.
I know. Then I'll be like, then I'll really be bitter towards him.
It's going to be Tyrone Tracy.
But I will say, I think I will plan some of my redraft leagues around getting him. Like I will look at, my running back strategy based on trying to land him in the 8th or 9th round.
Yeah, I like it. Cool. So that's your sleeper. One more take from you. Hit us with a hot take for this upcoming season.
Okay, and I have no idea what your thoughts are on this guy, but I am super high, way higher than consensus on Derrick Henry. I think he is the RB10 by ADP. He might be RB9, somewhere around there. I've got him as my RB5, and I completely understand 30-year-old running back. That doesn't even happen anymore. But Derrick Henry's never happened either. Like he is the outlier of outliers. And if you look, probably every website, every fantasy analyst, who do you think they would project for the most rushing touchdowns this year? Derrick Henry. Maybe Christian McCaffrey. You might get some that say Christian McCaffrey, or it's a tie, but I think most would say Derrick Henry. The last 9 running backs that have averaged, that have led the league in rushing touchdowns have an average RB5 finish, and they've averaged 20 points per game. And that includes 2 times with Derrick Henry. He's had 10 plus rushing touchdowns in 6 straight seasons. Last year, he had 12 with the Titans, and they ranked 27th in scoring. Baltimore last year ranked 4th in scoring. So he's being upgraded onto a massively better offense, an offense that is going to run the ball. Historically, has always run the ball a lot and run the ball well with Lamar Jackson, especially. And I don't think they're going to use light, now slimmed down Lamar Jackson near the goal line. They've never really done a lot of using Lamar Jackson near the goal line anyway. He's only because I've had a lot of people push back on this. No, Lamar Jackson's going to steal rushing. Yeah, he's going to run the ball some, and he's going to get some rushing touchdowns, but he's never had more than 7 rushing touchdowns at any point in his career. Last year he had 5. The 2 previous seasons he had 2 in each of those, or I think 2 and 3. I know he missed some games in there, but point being, he's never been like a Jalen Hurts type or a Josh Allen type that gets a ton of rushing touchdowns. And just think about it. They just signed Lamar to one of the biggest quarterback contracts in NFL history. Who are they going to give the ball to near the goal line? Him or the 1-year rental monster that's 250 pounds, Derrick Henry? They're going to give it to Henry. So I think his floor is at least what he did last year, 12 rushing touchdowns. But I think he does much better than that. I think there's a very real possibility he gets to 20 rushing touchdowns or more. And maybe he throws in 2 receiving touchdowns. I think that's a possibility. And I know his career average has dipped over the past few years because he's getting older, but I think it could go back up with teams having to, respect Lamar Jackson and having to respect him, doing a play action or a read option or something like that. I think that'll open things up for Derrick Henry. And I know their offensive line's not as good as it was last year, but I still think it's better than what he's seen last year with the Titans. Gus Edwards last year had 13 rushing touchdowns. And he ranked 5th in goal line carries. And that was only in like a part-time role for Gus Edwards. So I think Derrick Henry in a full-time role, because nobody else on that roster really scares me to steal too many touches. I think he's in for a big year.
I think so too. This is the Derrick Henry swan song. You can't ask for really a better landing spot for a 1-year rental from Derrick Henry. Like Lamar Jackson's going to be freezing linebackers. I could just imagine week 1, whatever read option. Like they could probably just run the read option. That could be their only play. And they would probably win games with that. It's going to be incredible. I'm so excited to see it. And to your point, actually, I checked the Player Profiler PPR seasonal rankings. Points per full PPR. We have him at number 5. We actually have him at number 5 right now.
All right.
So very surprising. And it makes
sense. What points per game? What points per game did you say you have him at?
14.5. That was last year. Sorry, projected fantasy points is 258.8. It doesn't give me projected points per game, but
let me see, because I had run some projections on him. You had him at how many PPR points?
258.8.
Okay, I was a little bit higher than that. I feel like I was, I was posting about it on Instagram. So I was trying to get it, a little bit excitement about it. I think I had him at like 272. So about 16 points per game. So if, all he has to do, if he gets 1,500 total yards, because he'll give you a couple of those screen passes for, some chunk yardage. I think if he can get that, maybe 20 receptions and 16 total touchdowns, that's 272 fantasy points, PPR points. So I think that's totally possible.
Yeah, I'm with you. Honestly, I'm with you. I like the value right now. And I mean, yes, he's old, but it's Derrick Henry. You just got to ride that thing till the wheels come off, and if it happens, it happens, but he's the king.
And that's my point too. Like, you hear this a lot. Like, I don't want to be holding the bag when the wheels do fall off. Worst case scenario, I think if the wheels fell off for Derrick Henry, he's still like the RB12. Like, I really don't see a scenario where he busts. Maybe he, you could say he could get injured. I don't think he's any more injury prone than anyone else. I think he's just too big, too strong, I've seen the workout videos. I'm not overly concerned with him getting injured.
No, neither am I. And even if he does, oh well. I probably still got
the position.
Yeah, exactly. Every running back gets hurt, and so you're still going to get the 20-point games until then, even if he does. But I'm sure that the Ravens will be utilizing him fairly decently to try to mitigate that risk. I mean, it's just so hard to hurt a guy that size anyway. So good takes throughout, really. I loved them all. Very fun show with you. Why don't we go ahead and just let the people know where they can find you?
Yeah, so website, fantasyguides.com. That's where I've got all my dynasty and redraft information. So I got rankings, draft kits, draft guides, dynasty guides, all that stuff on fantasyguides.com. You can find me, like you said, on Instagram, fantasy guides. I don't know if you noticed, I'm starting to post to Twitter, or do they call it X? I don't even know
I still
what do
call
you
it
call
Twitter.
it?
I
Okay.
call it Twitter. I like birds, so I'm just gonna. I don't really like Elon Musk right now, so it's Twitter.
I've had a Twitter account forever, but never really done anything with it. So I finally started posting there too. I'm trying to I'm on posting on TikTok as well. So fantasy underscore guides on TikTok or on Twitter, and then I think I'm fantasy football guys on TikTok, because you can't always get the same handle at all these. And you find these people that are just sitting on them as you see 0 posts, and you message them like, "Hey, can I get this name from you?" And no response. It's fun.
We want PlayerProfiler so bad. And it's just a dude with 0 followers, 0 posts on both Twitter and Instagram that we just had to be Roto Underworld. But we just want
I feel like it should be like a web domain. Like, you have to show that you're actually using it. And if you're not using it, like, you lose it. You know what I mean?
I even filed a damn trademark complaint, like sent over our trademark of PlayerProfiler, and they were like, "Nah."
Well, I did this thing where, like, I had shopfantasyguides.com, because Fantasy Guides was taken, and when you'd go to that website, it wasn't even a real website. It was just like, "Oh, do you want to buy this domain?" So there was a guy squatting on it forever, and I, for years, kept checking back in, and finally I got to a price where I was like, all right, now I gotta make the move. So I was at least able to get fantasyguides.com, but there's a few of my username, social media usernames I'm still working on.
You'll get there one day, and even then, they're all close enough. So, guys, I actually did put the website in the link or in the description, so go check that out, fantasyguides.com. Genuinely incredible content. The draft guide you put out is really, really good. Highly recommend downloading that, and definitely recommend subscribing over at Instagram. Again, one of the kings of fantasy football Instagram over there, doing really great.
And sorry, Jason, if I may say, we also do a weekly podcast as well. I got a team of guys. We jump in, we talk a lot of dynasty during the off season, but we'll be doing a lot more shows during the season, doing start six, stuff like that. So just wherever you get your podcast, Fantasy Guides podcast.
Nice. So go check out all that stuff. Steve, thanks again for joining me. Awesome.
Thanks for inviting me.
You guys. Sorry.
Oh, did you see the shirt? I wore it. You never.
Yeah. Perfect. On brand. It's incredible stuff. Guys, Steve does a lot of great stuff for Player Profiler as well. Like I said, made the Wake and Take logo, made a bunch of other show logos, and help him with design. Great friend of the show, friend of the platform. Great to have you on, man. We'll have you on again during the season, and maybe we'll get some Instagram live streams going again once football comes up. That would be fun.
Absolutely. Can't wait.
Awesome. Well, have a wonderful day, audience. Enjoy your week as well. See y'all tomorrow. Peace.